Hey everybody, it's your old pal John, and I am back here with Top 10 Scary British Urban Legends. By the way, thank you to Bob, and I forget the rest of your screen name, for telling me that my merch sucked, and I should make a t-shirt specifically called Americans Suck at History. So, if you want that, you're more than welcome. I put it up. All right, top 10 scary British urban legends.
And this is the top 10 scary British urban legends. Starting off at number 10 now, we have the corpse train. Now, according to London folklore, in the early 1900s, there was a train that ran underneath the city and it was only for dead people. Back then, London's hospitals and morgues were struggling to deal with the vast amount of people that were dying from poverty and disease. They decided to transport the bodies out of the city, but knew that they couldn't do it overground without disturbing a lot of people. So, they used an existing train line to load the bodies onto. The train ran just the other side of a wall from the normal daily service, where unsuspecting Londoners were getting on and off their trains unaware of the nearby bodies. Next up at number 9 now, we have...
That's pretty weird. I don't actually really know what to say about that. I mean, it makes sense, but you'd think that it wouldn't have run very long, because that's a horrible reason to create a train. Although I have to admit, some of the richest countries are some of the dumbest things. I mean, look at the United States of America. After Katrina, it was like a year or two or three. It was actually like 5 years when the cleanup started to finish up after Hurricane Katrina. And most people don't do much for the poor people. Anyway, sorry.
Now, the suicide pool. This one comes from Epping Forest near Essex. The story goes that years ago, a young couple in love were followed to a pond in the forest by the girl's father. When the couple finally embraced, the father leapt from the trees to confront the boy. The fight got out of hand, and the father ended up killing the boy in a rage at the edge of the pool.
Personally, if I was the father of a girl, I see nothing wrong with this.
The waters then turned black. Wildlife that was touching the water died instantly. In the years that followed, bodies started to appear in the water. First, it was an old woman, then a young one with her young child beside her. They say the pool drew them into their death, and that the pool is still out there in the forest somewhere, waiting for its next victim. Next.
All right, that's just a legend. So, they all are, but okay. I keep forgetting these are legends. These aren't real things.
At number 8 now, we have Annie. This one comes from Edinburgh, Scotland. In the old town there lies a street known as Mary King's Close. It's steeped in myths and legends of hauntings and murders. In 1990, a psychic called Aiko Gibo visited and felt a small hand touch hers. She said that she then made contact with the spirit of a dead child called Annie, who had died in a plague hundreds of years ago and had lost her doll. The psychic then went to a nearby shop and brought back a Barbie doll for her. Now, since then, visitors leave dolls for Annie, and a mountain of them has built up in the dark. Moving on to number...
All right. I will admit, little girls who are ghosts are scary to me.
7 now, we have the Faceless Woman. This one comes from the borough of Barking in London. There you can find Beacon Tree Station, home to the Faceless Woman. The most famous sighting of her happened in 1992. A station supervisor reported that on one night he heard the handle of his office door rattle. Outside on the platform stood a woman. She had blonde hair, she wore a very pale dress and just stared into the distance. The supervisor approached her, but as he reached out, she turned to him only to reveal she had no face, just darkness where there should be one. Local ghost hunters claim that she is the victim of a train crash that happened there in 1958, which killed 10 people. At number 6...
I don't know if I buy that. It just seems too convenient that someone doesn't have a face. By the way, feel free to disagree with anything I'm coming up with, because this is the first time I've heard any of these.
Now we have the Beast. England's Hackney Marshes is known for its...
Also the nickname of my ex-wife.
Sprawling woodland and boggy reed marshes often covered in swirling fog, the perfect setting for this urban legend. The story goes that in 1980, 2 bear carcasses were found in the river. They had been decapitated. People started speculating about who or what could cut a bear's head clean off its shoulders. Then, a year later, 4 boys were taking a walk along the marsh one winter morning when they saw it through the trees. They described it as a giant, great, growling, hairy thing. As soon as it saw them, it reared up on its back legs and let out a deafening roar. The boys ran, but the story remains always in the back of people's minds as they trudged through the marsh. We're returning now to the London Underground for our number 5 with the...
I don't... We have our own myths and legends here in the U.S., but I don't know. I you know, if bears are gone in Europe, sorry, not in Europe, in Great Britain, I don't know, I just find that one hard to believe.
Crying Girl. On November 18th, 1987, a match was dropped on an escalator at London's King Cross station. A fire quickly spread into the nearby ticket office, which resulted in the death of 31 people. In the years since then, passengers have reported seeing a girl who died around the station. She has long brown hair, wears jeans and a t-shirt, and is always crying. Some people have even reported hearing her sobs while smelling smoke coming out from the escalators. Back to Scotland now.
That is weird. Yeah, okay. That's it. A lot of things have happened at King's Cross Station. I mean, there was an attack there, and oh, you're gonna kill me for this. 2005. A lot of things happen.
And number 4 with Sony Bean. This is the gruesome tale of Alexander Sony Bean, a man who was said to be the head of a Scottish clan of cannibals in medieval times. According to legend, the group was made up of his wife, their 14 children and 32 grandchildren, some of whom were born through incest. They lived in a cave by the water and would ambush people on the road at night. They would bring their bodies back to the cave to then dismember and eat them. Any leftovers were pickled in a jar for later. When King James VI of Scotland eventually heard of these murders, he led a manhunt to capture them. The clan was caught and then executed. Some people say you can still find the cave along the Benane Head area of Scotland. Moving on to number...
This is always like they say, and some say you can still find the cave. Well, it's either there or it's not. And I mean, I know they're meant to be. Okay. 3
now, we have Cane Hill. Some say this is one of the most haunted places in England. Okay. It was a mental asylum for over 100 years from...
All right, already I believe it. Mental asylum. Perfect.
1882 to 1991. It built up a reputation for abandoning some of its patients, hiding them away from the public eye, and never truly helping them. Some people say the patients who died left their energy behind there because of their tortured lives. The building was gutted by a mysterious fire in 2010. Perhaps the scariest stories of all are of the faces appearing by the burnt out windows. Next up, Adam.
I'm always for that kind of... Wait, that came out wrong. I always believe in sort of, you know, where like people who have like a mental disability or something like that are in like an institution. They all of them seem to have closed around the 1990s. We have one here nearby in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and I did happen to let's just say get a little closer than I was supposed to. Years ago in a former YouTube channel as with a group of YouTubers, and yeah. And later it became the background for a movie called The Mirror or something like that. But I don't know. It just seems like a place where if you're a tortured soul, or you're a tortured person, or you have issues, like I don't know. I kind of sometimes wonder, are you really hearing voices? And if you are, I might believe it. I mean, I'd have to hear about it. I'd probably make a terrible doctor for one of these places.
2 now, we have the House of the Screaming Skull. This one comes from Bettiscombe Manor in Dorset, England. The legend goes that in 1830, a man lived there called John Frederick Pinney. He had a slave that he had brought back from the Caribbean island of Nevis. The man became ill, and on his deathbed, he swore he would never rest unless his body was returned home to Nevis. Pinney refused to pay for that expense, and when he died, he had the man buried in the local graveyard. After that, ill fortune began to plague the village for months. Screams and cries were heard from the cemetery. At the manor house, windows rattled and doors kept slamming. The body was dug up and brought to the manor house, where today only the skull remains, where it's said to haunt the manor, but the village remains safe. And finally, number 1 now, we...
Okay, yeah, nothing to say there, but I mean, I guess I think of the names of these things would be a little better. However, That being said, though, they come up with names for movies that are pretty crazy, and so I'm judging that against, I guess, horror movie names.
Have the Hell Hounds. Dartmoor is a vast, rocky, windy, and mysterious part of England. It's popular among tourists, but everyone who goes there is aware of the legend of the Hell Hounds. It's said that a pack of these ghost dogs wanders the moors at night, preying on sheep, and they're not afraid of humans. They've often been described as cat-like, but with the frame of a bear, and very fast. There have been pictures and film taken of them over the years that claim to show glimpses of these Hell Hounds in action. Many of the locals don't even need that though. They've heard the stories handed down from generation to generation. Some of them even say they've seen the hounds with their own 2 eyes. Great stories.
That's crazy. Which one of these, do you guys believe any of these? I'm just curious, and is there like a new one that you haven't heard of, or have you heard of one and you do believe it? I am curious. This is one of these weird things that I find, that my mind is lent to the curiosity of it. All right, everybody, I'll talk to you later. And I just banged my microphone. I'm sure it broke.